Hey folks, how's it going? Let's talk about Eagle Pass for a minute. I'm not going to go into a lot of the backstory about what's been happening down there. I think with all of the news coverage on the mainstream media, all of the YouTubers talking about it, regardless of what side of the fence you're on this issue, whether you're pro Texas securing the border or you're pro open border, people come across free will, wherever you stand on the issue, I think everybody has a basic understanding of the events that's been happening down there. There are, though, a few things that, at least a couple of things that I think need to be discussed. Uh, I don't. This might have been covered by some other YouTubers. I haven't been able to watch a lot of YouTube videos here lately myself, so I haven't been able to keep up with a lot of stuff being talked about. But one thing that I've noticed is everybody is making drawing parallels or making analogies about the first Civil War and this being the flashpoint for the next Civil War. Whether that's the case or not, I'm not sure whether it is or the potential obviously is there. But I think that that really depends on a few things happening. Um, but before I get into all of that, let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling and the legal standpoint of all of this. Not that I'm an attorney, not that I'm a constitutional attorney or a scholar or anything like that. Um, the ruling handed down by the Supreme Court by SCOTUS is pretty vague and pretty standoffish, if you ask me. The reason I say that is normally when SCOTUS issues a ruling, there's an opinion with it that puts that ruling into context and gives some weight behind it so that people understand how it's supposed to be applied, what the intent behind it is. Um, with this ruling, however, though, there's just a ruling, there's no opinion whatsoever. And I think that's very telling because basically all they said was that uh, the federal government uh, has the right to go in and cut the wire. The uh, Texas and the Texas National Guard has put up. They're not. They didn't go in and say that Texas has no right to put up the wire. That there's no legal standing for that. They didn't go into any kind of discussion about the Biden administration's uh, lack of enforcement of immigration law. Uh, and just for the record, understand that the open border issue goes way back before Biden even became president. That was an issue under Trump, although not as much of one. It was still an issue under Trump. It was an issue under the last few presidents, to be honest. This goes back a ways. The U.S. has needed serious immigration reform and enforcement for a long, long time now. So this isn't a new issue, but it's being politicized in a way where it seems like all of this is happening now. Well, it's not happening now all of a sudden since Biden became president. It's been happening. There's been a major issue with immigration, with processing uh, refugees, people seeking asylum, things like that. The whole thing has been a screwed up mess for a long time. Uh, but under Biden, it has grown considerably worse. That can't be denied. If you deny that, you're just closing your eyes to the reality of the situation. Because I think since Biden's been in office, I think we're looking at somewhere between 9.6 or somewhere around 9.6 million people have crossed the border illegally. Uh, Hundreds of them have been documented as being on terror watch lists, no fly lists, things like that. Probably way, way more than that would be uh, my guess. But getting back to the Supreme Court's ruling, the Supreme Court ruled that the federal government can go in and cut the wire. They didn't rule that Texas had no legal standing to put up the wire. They were breaking the law. They didn't rule on uh, the government's failure to secure our border or enforce existing on the books laws. Um, and to me, again, that's very telling because it it brings to mind, at least for me, and this is my opinion only, that they're trying to put this off until after the next election. The next election is already so close. This is the election year, and obviously candidates on both sides are going to be trying to politicize this, um, and people on both sides of the political aisle are going to interpret what's going on in different ways. A lot of Democrats are very much in support of just letting anyone in, don't even do a background check, let them in, give them anything they need without considering the ramifications of how this is hurting U.S. citizens, who's paying for all of this, what the risks are. Um, None of that is being considered on the side of the left, and you know there's a big disagreement. This is a big divide, obviously. And again, I think because there was no opinion issued, I think it was a way that the SCOTUS could kind of hand off any kind of interpretations or recommendations, or however you want to look at it. They're trying to avoid putting out that opinion that could be used politically, so that they won't be seen as taking sides. Because if you look at it legally, by constitutional law, naturally the federal government has final authority over the borders of the United States. The issue here is not that. The issue here is the fact that the Biden administration has, and previous administrations, have failed to uh, efficiently and effectively secure our borders and still process those people seeking asylum that have legitimate reasons for coming here. So what's happened is you've got a screwed up intake system, and to circumvent that, you've got people that are allowing these immigrants to come across the border illegally without any kind of consequences, no recourse for all this illegal activity. To me, that's a very dangerous thing. You don't know who's coming across. You don't know what they've been convicted of or done in the past. You don't know what they're currently doing, what kind of criminal activity they're currently in. You don't know who at all is involved. So it opens the door for all kinds of terrorists to be coming across, uh, human trafficking, drugs, uh, illegal weapons. There's just a whole issue with the security of this country going on there, and for all intents and purposes, it looks like the government, particularly this administration, doesn't care who comes across. Now, the thought is, I understand that a lot of people think that it's because of this great replacement theory, or essentially you bring in enough people and give them asylum, and then you can start having them vote, and you can give them all this stuff to have them vote. And when somebody comes into this country, more often than not, unless they've come from a really really uh, socialist or communist country, they're going to associate more with the Democrats than the Republicans for the simple fact that the Democrats are the ones that are handing everybody welfare. They're the ones that are uh, just handing out money left and right for the most part. Don't get me wrong. There is a lot of foreign aid and handouts under the Republicans that I disagree with, but nowhere near to the level that you see coming from Democrat uh, politicians and Democrat supporters. So when these new people come across the border and they have the chance to vote, then they're going to obviously support the people that are giving them all this free stuff, the free healthcare, the free phones, the free hotel rooms, and uh, free rent and healthcare and free food. Obviously they're going to support the people that are giving them all this free stuff. So the great replacement theory is that the idea that they're being brought across so that they can vote, and because of that, they'll vote on the side of the Democrats, and then it'll help turn the tides of this country and help push this country more into socialism. I believe there is some merit to that, but how much of a factor that is, I can't say. I don't think any of us can say for sure how much of how much of a factor that is. I do believe it is a factor, though. Uh, I understand wanting to help people. I understand the idea and the desire to help people that need it and give people an opportunity to work and earn a living. Uh, but there's a legal way of doing this. Uh, and you have to understand that when you have people coming across and going through all the effort to do it legally, and then they see people just jumping a fence and being handed free rent, free phones, free medical care, all the things that they're having to work for, that the U.S. citizens are having to work for, it's very frustrating and infuriating. So I can understand all of that. Uh, so until the Supreme Court comes out and makes some sort of ruling giving an opinion behind all of this, you're going to have a standoff between Texas and the federal government. I got kind of sidetracked there, but I want to get back on track here with my thoughts. Until there is an opinion, a clear cut, well defined, this is right, this is wrong, this is legal, this is illegal, this is why it has to be done this way. Until you get that from the SCOTUS, you're going to have this standoff between Texas and other states and the federal government, for the simple reason that right now these border states are taking the brunt of all of this illegal activity coming across the border. They're the ones having to pay for this. Our tax money is going to pay for this. So a lot of other places like New York, Chicago, whatever, up until recently, they haven't had to deal with this. And even now, with them getting 4,000, 5,000 immigrants a week in a week's time, they're already screaming, we can't handle it. We don't have the resources. But stop and think about Texas, for example, where they're getting 10, 15,000, as much as 10 or 15,000 a day. New York can't handle 5,000 a week. That's a daily average for Texas on the low end. So, how can Texas be expected to handle this when New York can't even handle a fraction of it? So, we're going to continue to see this standoff. We're going to continue to see this division. I think that until you get a clear cut decision and ruling, that's going to continue. And you're not going to get that kind of ruling until after the next election. At least that's my opinion. That's my belief. I don't see that happening because once the SCOTUS visits a case, They're not going to revisit that. They're going to wait until something else happens and then rule on that. So the question comes, as far as this being uh, a parallel to the first Civil War, could this be a flashpoint for our next Civil War? It could, and I mean, it has the possibility of that happening, but the odds of that happening, I don't know, are that actually that high. Right now, I see this as political posturing. I understand Texas is fed up with it. A lot of people in Texas are fed up with it. A lot of conservatives are really fed up with all of this. So I understand for those folks, it's not really posturing, but understand with certain politicians, it is political posturing, and it will continue. The only way I see this really setting off a civil war is one of two ways. The first being that there is a uh, some sort of incident involving people crossing the border and the Texas authorities and Texas National Guard trying to enforce security. That there's some sort of uh, I'm trying to figure out how to put this the best way I can. Some sort of incident involving a lot of loss of life or firing of weapons. And that could potentially erupt into a civil war because you've got all the supporters of all these people coming across the border. Obviously, if something like that happened in mass or on a large scale, you're going to see people rioting. You're going to see people protesting. Uh, you're going to see politicians on the left go nuts. So there is that potential there. The other way that I see this setting off the powder keg is okay. Abbott has said that the feds can come in and cut this wire, but they'll just lay more. Okay. At the moment, the last I heard, the Texas National Guard still wasn't letting the Border Patrol have access to this site. There's going to come a point, I think, at least there potentially could, where Biden is going to either send in large amounts of Border Patrol and law enforcement, or he's going to try to federalize the National Guard to put them under his authority instead of the state's authority. And then they're going to try to force their way through to cut the wire, while at the same time, Texas is still adamantly refusing them entry. You have the potential then for shots to be fired between various law enforcement agencies, the potential for division among the National Guard itself, where some National Guard are going to try to attempt to follow the president's orders, while others will try to support or remain loyal to the governor of Texas. Then you have a more serious uh, potential there with law enforcement versus law enforcement, or National Guard versus law enforcement. You see what I'm getting at. That could really set off things, because if there's a conflict between any of those two groups or any of those groups, or if the National Guard splits or fractures somehow and there's a conflict between themselves, that could at least to my understanding of certain laws and executive orders that are on the books, that are on record, that could allow the president to declare a martial law, bring in the actual military, and try to lock everything down. In which case, it's feasible that the possibility could exist that he would try to freeze the elections. Not saying it's very likely. I don't believe that would happen, but it is a possibility, and we always have to look at the possibilities so that we're prepared for them. Either way, this is one convoluted, screwed up mess that wouldn't be happening if our government would do its job and enforce the existing laws and put the concerns, the safety, security, and welfare of this country ahead of all of these people that, for whatever reason, we're expected to support uh, to no end. This is a really screwed up situation. I don't know that it will actually spark a civil war. It definitely has the potential, uh, but there's a lot of things in this country that have the potential for that. What I will say is that keep your eyes on this, keep watching it, but understand that while this is going on, this could also be used to distract you from something else that's happening. So don't become so fixated on this one issue that you lose focus on everything else. And don't let this one issue become your hill to die on to the extent that you stop prepping because you're watching this, or you're prepping only for this one thing. You need to continue prepping. You need to continue building your redundancy in your life, so that you can have your independence from the systems of support that the government can and will use to subjugate you. So that's my main message here: is just keep an eye on it. Yes, understand though that you have no direct control over this. All you can do is watch and prepare. Understand that this could be used as political posturing to affect the election. It can be used as a distraction to distract you from something else that's more important that may be going on. Uh, and more importantly, don't let this become a distraction uh, from your everyday prepping and your everyday preparations and building independence and self reliance in your life. All right, so I've droned on enough about this. I know a lot of other people have talked about it, but that's what I wanted to get on here and say. That's all I've got for the night. I appreciate you guys watching. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, folks, keep prepping, stay safe, take care, and until next time, I'll catch you later.